Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and I thought I would do an overview of some of 8bitdo's more premium controllers. This company began making replica controllers of old classics like the Nintendo controller, and they still do that, but they now have kind of matured their product line into something that actually delivers a very premium gaming experience, and the prices are relatively reasonable on these. And I have these four out here because these are kind of their higher end controllers, and there's a reason to own one over another one. So what I thought I would do today is look at the 8bitdo Ultimate 2.4 controller, their Ultimate Bluetooth controller, their Pro 2, and an honorable mention of the SN30 Pro. And we're going to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of each. Now, before we get into this, I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that all of these controllers came in free of charge from 8bitdo over the last couple of years. However, all the opinions you're about to hear are my own. No one is paying for this review, nor has anyone reviewed or approved what you're about to see before it was uploaded. So let's get into it now and see what all of these controllers are all about. Now, we're going to start off with their Ultimate controllers, and there are two flavors of the Ultimate controller. Now, at the outset, I wrongly said that this was the Ultimate 2.4. This one is actually the Ultimate Bluetooth controller. This one is the Ultimate 2.4. Now, what's the difference between these two? Well, one of the big differences is compatibility. Both of these will work with PCs that support X input devices, and that would include the Steam Deck, your emulator stations, your misters, and all that kind of stuff. It'll work with pretty much anything that's compatible with an X input PC controller, both of them. However, this one is also compatible with the Nintendo Switch. This one does not work with the Switch. This one, the Bluetooth controller, is also not compatible with Android or Apple devices, whereas the 2.4 controller is. So if you are looking for something to work with your Apple TV and your PC, this one's going to be your choice for that, whereas this one is the better choice for working with your Switch and your PC, if that makes sense. And it's a bit confusing for me here because one of their older controllers, which is also going to be featured in this video in a few minutes, the Pro 2, doesn't have these same compatibility restrictions. This one can be configured to work with anything, whereas here you've got to buy different hardware depending on what you're trying to link up with. There's also a very big hardware difference between these two insofar as the control sticks are concerned. So the Ultimate Bluetooth controller, which is the more expensive one, has Hall effect sensors in the sticks, whereas the 2.4 controller, which is less expensive, has a traditional Alps type of stick. And for most casual gamers, you probably won't notice much of a difference, but in many cases, the Hall effect sticks are superior. Now, I am kind of a casual gamer, and I've noticed just how much smoother the Hall effect stick is versus the one that is in the 2.4 controller. And the reason why it is smoother is that it's using magnets versus potentiometers to determine the placement of the stick. These last longer, you don't get the drift that sometimes develops with these over time. It is a superior technology in most cases, although some hardcore gamers do prefer the Alps sticks because the polling rate is faster on them. But I think for most casual gamers, you're really actually going to enjoy the Hall effect quite a bit, and it does have a little more longevity perhaps over the long haul. Now, one thing both controllers have in common is a charging dock, and this is a very nice and convenient way to make sure your controller always has a full charge. So when you're done playing with it, you can leave this by your computer or your TV and just plop the controller down and you'll always be ready to go. The batteries on these last a really long time, so you're never going to kill it during a play session. Now, these charging docks connect up via USB-C for power, and additionally, on the bottom, there is a 2.4 gigahertz dongle that is used for 8bitdo's proprietary wireless protocol. And this is actually better than Bluetooth, so you'll get slightly faster response times if you use their 2.4 versus Bluetooth for wireless connections. And what's neat about this is that this dongle comes out, so if you wanted to take the controller on the road with you, you can just take the dongle and plug it into your computer or other device, and then you can charge the controller over its USB-C port here. So you don't have to take the dock with you if you want to go portable. But when the dongle is installed inside the dock, and the dock is connected to your PC or other device, it will work through this. So you can connect essentially to the dock wirelessly for that 2.4 gigahertz connection. So that can be pretty convenient. The controllers can also connect directly when they are plugged in with the USB-C cable. Now, both controllers have a switch on the back, and on the 2.4 controller, you have a switch that will take you between direct input mode and X input mode, depending on the device that you are connecting to. On the Bluetooth controller, you have a switch that takes you between the Bluetooth mode and the 2.4 gigahertz mode. And so just be aware of those differences. Now, what happens with this controller, the Bluetooth one, is that when you are in Bluetooth mode by default, the buttons are mapped in a switch layout. When you switch to 2.4, the buttons map to the Xbox layout here. So when you're in 2.4 mode, B is A and A is B. But they do have software where you can go in and remap the buttons if you prefer. So just be aware of that. In Bluetooth mode, it is in the switch configuration. And that just adds to some of the complexity of these controllers and getting them set up. But they are the most comfortable. They do have a nice Xbox layout. So if that's your thing, these are really nice for that. And one of the standout features of the 8bitdo controllers across the line is their great directional pad. And although my preference for D-pad heavy games is not to use one of these Xbox controllers where my thumb has to stretch out a bit, when you do want to play with a quick D-pad game, the D-pad is much nicer, I think, than the Xbox D-pad and feels a lot closer to what you might experience on the Super Nintendo, for example, or the regular Nintendo. And they've been really fixing and developing this D-pad quite nicely over the years, and it's something that I really like quite a bit. But that gives me the opportunity to roll in what is still my favorite controller here, which is the Pro 2. Now, this is kind of set up in a PlayStation style where your thumbsticks are located towards the center of the controller. And your D-pad, in my opinion, is in a much more comfortable position here. And these handles really make it comfortable. It's a very nice controller that kind of mixes the best of Nintendo's Super Nintendo layout and PlayStation, and it's just awesome. And what's really nice about this too is they have a clamp that you can get for it to put your mobile phone on it, and because it's got these nice grips on everything, the balance is quite nice on this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this one has a more simple compatibility to it, because on the bottom there is a switch here that can take you from switch mode to Android mode to direct input mode to X input mode just with a flick of the switch, and everything maps itself properly. So when you put it into Nintendo Switch mode here, it will map the buttons to what you see here, where B is B and A is A. But if you go over to your X input mode, these buttons will remap themselves automatically to the PC layout, so your muscle memory will take you to where you want to go. And of course, you've got the great D-pad here right under your left thumb, where it should be, I think, for some of those classic games that you might want to play. All of the controllers have some really nice analog triggers on them, and I'll show you the software in a minute where you can make some adjustments to that, so that feels really nice. And if you wanted something a little smaller, the SN30 Pro here actually feels very similar to the Pro 2, and the feature set is similar as well. You don't have a switch for switching between modes, but there are instructions printed on the back here for doing the same thing. And like the Pro 2, the smaller controller here is compatible across the board with the Switch, with Android, with Apple devices, and it's very handy, I think, for a smaller controller. I found, though, that if you're using the thumbsticks, it's not as comfortable because you don't have that grip on the bottom. But for classic games in particular, this works out quite well. And another big difference here is that the triggers are not analog. So if you were looking for a shorter travel trigger, this controller has it, and the feel is much closer to what you might experience on a Super Nintendo. All right, so here is the Ultimate software, and what we're going to use it with is the Ultimate controller here, but the other ones like this one will work in a very similar fashion. And you can see as I've got the software loaded up here, I have a choice between Switch and Windows because I can define how it works on each platform, and the controller will remember the settings. So if I click on Switch here, you can see that because we've got a controller with a Switch layout on it, everything is kind of one-to-one. So A is A, B is B, and so on. But I could also remap the buttons here and make them do something different when the Switch is connected. And this is really handy because not a lot of Switch games often let you remap controls, but you can do it through the software and get the controls set up any which way you want. You can also save it to a profile, and the controller can store 3 profiles at a time. So if you have some game where you want a specific control set, you can have that saved as a profile, and you can very easily switch to that on the fly without having to load the software up. Now, if I click on Windows, you can see we'll have a very different look at things because it's mapping the buttons differently. B is A, Y is X, A is B, and X is Y, because the layout that you typically have on an Xbox controller is a little bit different, right? So that is what they have there. Another thing I really like about this is that you have control over how your sticks work. So if we jump over here to my 2-up view, I can go to my sticks option here. And remember, this is the one with the Hall effect sticks. It has got practically no dead zone to it. Check this out. Like just a tiny little push of the stick starts registering. And if I wanted more of a dead zone, I can set it up here just by dragging this over. And as you can see, we can adjust where it starts registering movement. But again, because of the Hall effect here, there's just nothing between you and things getting registered here by default, which is awesome. And that's one of the reasons why I love these Hall effect sticks so much. But you can you really fine-tune this quite granularly through this. Additionally, you have control over the triggers here, and you can also get a feel for how sensitive they are as well. And here you can also set dead zones for the triggers on an individual basis. And because you have profiles, you can change the behavior for each of these. So the software, I think, is really a great way to fine-tune what you're looking for here. And for the price point, I think these controllers offer quite a bit. Now remember, the software only works on the Ultimate controllers here along with the Pro 2. And there are a few other controllers in the 8bitdo line that work with it as well. But for the purposes of this video, these 3 are the ones that can be configured with it. This controller does not support the software. So if you were looking for fine-tuning, these are the way to go. And all 3 of these support the profile feature as well. So there you go. I just wanted to do a quick buying guide for some of my favorite 8bitdo controllers. They do make more than what we're talking about today. They've got quite a product line at this point. But I think these controllers kind of represent the best insofar as features and compatibility are concerned. My one gripe at the moment is that I really want this Ultimate Bluetooth controller to have broader compatibility because it does have the Hall effect sticks. It feels great. It is the best controller they have made, but unfortunately it lacks the simplicity that we have here on the Pro 2, where you've got a single switch here that can go between different devices. And unfortunately, the way they've got things now, you can't use this with an Android or an Apple device, and I know a lot of you would probably like to do that. So hopefully that will improve over time. I will say, though, that if you have Android apps that are compatible with X input, then this one likely will work, but it's just not as robust in its compatibility as this one is. Also of note on compatibility, these do not work with the Xbox or the PlayStation. And that includes the current consoles and the older ones. So you're kind of limited to Switch and PC and mobile devices. But I think for a lot of folks looking for a robust controller that feels good and has a decent D-pad, 8bitdo has come a long way, and they remain my favorite controller maker. And I've actually bought a lot of 8bitdo controllers in addition to the ones that they've sent over to the channel for review. That is going to do it for this one. Let me know what you thought down in the comments section. And until next time, this is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold level supporters Brian Parker, Chris Allegretta, Hot Sauce and Video Games, Logic KGR, Tom Albrecht, and Amda Brown. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.